Hello, listeners. Welcome to episode 2 of the SOS from Home podcast. I'm Michael, joined here with my two co-hosts, Catherine and Diego.
Thanks, Michael. Today we're joined by SOS's Executive Director, Mr. Amir Samandi. He's a spy turned social entrepreneur who now works to educate kids through service and travel, and in doing so, has taken over 500 students to 14 different countries. He was recently named one of San Antonio's 40 under 40 by the San Antonio Business Journal for his work with SOS. Mr. Samandi, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and have this opportunity to talk with y'all.
Yeah, and we're excited to have you.
Oh,
So let's start off with your background in the State Department. So how do you think that led you to where you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I got to the State Department, I was about 23 years old. I was working on my master's degree, George Washington University at the Elliott School of International Affairs. Shout out to GW. And I had just graduated from St. Mary's University with my bachelor's in
hey,
international
hey.
relations. Yeah, shout out to St. Mary's. So education is really important. Just a quick little sidebar there. But yeah, so I ended up having the opportunity to work at the State Department, and it was a program where they bring you in to kind of groom you for upper management. It was called Career Entry Program, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. You know, I wanted to be a diplomat. That was kind of my goal. Work in the foreign service, but at that point, you know, I had an opportunity to get my foot in the door, and I took it. And I always say I didn't choose to work in intelligence. You know, I know Diego called me a spy, right? So I was an intelligence analyst, not an operative, but still considered a spy. And I didn't choose it. It chose me. So they said, hey, your first rotation is going to be as in intelligence. So I was assigned to the Bureau of Intelligence and Research. And I remember when I first got there, they were kind of like, where do we put the new guy? You know, they were looking for a spot for me, and they ended up putting me on the 24/7 watch, which is like, you know, like when you see in the movies those operation centers with like all the TVs and like phones that can wake people up, like the president. Like that's where they put me. Like, oh my gosh, okay. And my first like kind of major assignments were kind of like classified mailroom duties, so like making sure things
Ooh.
got to the right people. And one of the things that I had to do was put together the briefing books for the Secretary of State Colin Powell, who
Oh,
was
wow.
the time Secretary of State. So I got to do that kind of stuff, and from there, it was about a month in, and they have this thing where you go around and you get signatures from all the key people that you're supposed to meet. And so the last one I had to get was the big boss, the director of the Bureau of Intelligence and Research. And I go in and I sit with him, and he's like, you know, busy reading, and you could tell he does this all the time. So he's just like, grab a seat, and I sit down. He's like, said, yes, sir. My name's Amir Samandi. I'm new here, and he's like, hey, you got any questions? And I said, just one. And he said, what's that? And I said, I want to make sure that if I am doing intelligence analysis and it goes against what's politically popular, that you're going to back me up for telling the truth. And he said, tell me more. And he kind of peers over his glasses with this look, you know, stares me in the eye, says, tell me more. And so we ended up talking for an hour. And the next thing I know, they moved me to the Iraq intelligence desk. So I went from, you know, kind of mailroom duties to like working in an office where, you know, we were in the thick of it. I mean, it was the Iraq War. It was 2003, so things were really intense. And I saw a lot. I learned a lot. And from that, I learned the importance that citizens have, that good global citizenship in our country and in other countries is going to make a better world. And where do you start? You start with education. You start with people really understanding the world, and you start with people having compassion and knowing how to help each other out. And so, if anything, the seeds of SOS were born from me looking at the world and saying, how do we fix a lot of this stuff? And it came back to education, caring about your neighbor, and learning about the world.
Wow.
Very well said.
Yeah. So, wow. I see like how like SOS spawned from this. Like I guess cuz like I knew that you were a spy, you know, like every like sitting in that world history or world geography class, you're like, I remember it's like probably one of the first things you said in like introduction on like my first day of freshman year was like, oh yeah, I was a spy. And I was like, how did this man go from being a spy to a world geography teacher? But that's really interesting.
Job of a spy. You got to hide in plain sight. It's
That's true.
always the most unlikely people. That's the best way to do it.
Well, in full disclosure for those listeners who don't know, I was actually a teacher to Catherine and to Diego
Hmm.
at their high school. Um, so I haven't taught Michael, but who knows? Maybe someday.
I did go to high school with Mr. Samandi's son, though, so in a sense, kind of.
That's true.
I still think that's wild. We were like so close, but just never met. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that because it just blows my mind. Because I go through all these pictures of what SOS does, and I see a whole bunch of kids that I knew from either band or that they went to ISA. And then it's like I was friends with Gabe since freshman year. We were in Palace together, and I still didn't know about his organization. I was like, dang.
So, Mr. Samandi, Catherine did a good job of touching on this. Being a geography teacher is wildly different from working in the State Department. Can you sort of walk us through your journey from the State Department to being a teacher at Nimitz Middle School?
Yeah, they are very different. Very, very different. So, I think a couple things that always kind of amazed me. So when I worked at the State Department, I had a boss. He had a boss. His boss was the bureau's director, and then his boss was Colin Powell, and his boss was the president. So I was really close. It was just a few hop, skips, and jumps to get to the White House. When I came, and things that I wrote, by the way, went to the White House. Like I know for a fact that I can't talk about them, but it made a difference one way or the other. I guess. I hope. Just because you get it right and you make a good case, though, doesn't mean that the elected official has to listen or has to make a good choice. Again, so that's another reason why I really wanted to, help. If we have better citizens, then we get better outcomes. And how do we get better citizens? By learning citizenship. It doesn't mean people are bad; they just need to know how to get involved. So that was kind of one of the things. But when I came to teach, it was like, all right, I have a boss, and then they have a boss, and then there's like a department chair, and then there's a dean, and then there's a principal, and then there's a superintendent, and then there's a school board. And then I was like, man, there's a lot of bosses, very low on the totem pole. And so you
Like a
really don't,
video game.
yeah, you really don't have a lot of power as a teacher. It felt very disempowering, unfortunately. And it's not a knock on anybody. It's just the system, and the system is very old. The system I think was invented, over 100 years ago to kind of help people get ready for work in factories. Um, and education needs a remodel, and I think right now it's getting one, whether it likes it or not, thanks to the COVID 19 outbreak and pandemic and the quarantining. But we're going to have to rethink how we do school, and so that gives me hope that teaching can be what I think it could be, what I hope it could be, and that is being a guide for young minds to think for themselves and find a way forward in their own lives.
Wow, yeah. Um, so as a teacher, you know, when I think of your background and the journey that you've, been on to be where you are, you don't have a traditional teacher's background, I don't think. So, did you ever feel like you brought something to the table in the sense as a teacher that maybe your colleagues didn't because of your unique background? You had been out in the world, in Washington D.C., heavily entrenched in politics. Do you think that ever translated to your teaching style?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think a lot of times, for the majority of people who you teach with, the majority are traditional teachers who go through a education program at a university, and education programs are all about learning. The the science of learning. How do we learn, right? And that's that's called pedagogy, teaching methods, and that kind of thing. And so I think it's interesting that when you don't have that kind of a degree and that kind of a background, then you're really just an expert or good at what you do, or use what you know as a practitioner, and then try to apply it more in the classroom. So yeah, there's going to be some theory in my class, sure, but having lived out a lot of the things that in grad school, even in undergrad, the theories that I learned about didn't always hold up.
Hmm.
Sometimes you were looking back at things that were no longer the case, and you had to be adapting to the way that the world was, not just the way that you were taught it was going to be. So I think when I came in as a teacher in the public schools, in both middle school geography and high school geography, I was able to sort of bring in stories and tie it to news articles and make it more relatable. And to be honest, yeah, I don't know that my colleagues always understood or appreciated that. Some did, very much so, and others, I'm different, so I'm not doing it by the book. I'm doing it by my own book, and it worked for some students really connected with that, and others maybe not so much, and that's okay because you're not gonna get to everybody with the same approach.
Yeah, I
But
like to say I really enjoyed your classes because like we'd be learning about all these different things and all these like things happening in the world, and then you'd bring in like a news article and you're like, hey, this happening in real time. And like I remember we'd always watch CNN 10 on Fridays, and
uh-huh.
those I really liked that too. It really helped connect with the world. So you said even though some of your colleagues didn't exactly like see eye to eye on that, I think the students really appreciated what you did for that. So
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think, that's for me, that was always my guiding star. And I told y'all that in class. I said, I don't care what my evaluations are from anybody else but my students, and by extension their parents, because you're minors. So if students and parents are happy with me, then I'm doing a good job. And that was always my goal. I think the one thing that I'm most proud of in terms of teaching tools, I created a game called The Great Game.
oh yes, that was fun.
And I think The Great Game is probably the best thing that I ever came up with in terms of how to teach young people concepts of international relations and global geopolitics that could make sense to them. And I think a lot of the things that seemed far fetched in The Great Game, Catherine, if you can remember playing,
Oh
there
yeah.
were there
Oh
were
yeah.
leaders who were acting, very selfishly and irresponsibly, and people would say things like, "Oh, leader would never say those things or do those things." And I think if you look at the world, you're like, actually, yeah, you kind of do.
Yeah. My group tried our best to have peaceful negotiations, but then we ended up taking up the entire room, so whoops.
And so, what's the takeaway from the game?
Well, it really I honestly like I really enjoyed that game. Like it really got me into like global affairs and like debate, I guess, in a way. And it's like easy to see how quickly things can go south or how quickly things can go up, like just through talking. So that was really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that was my intention. Is that, look, the global system doesn't just operate in a vacuum. It's based on people, and people can take actions for the good, or for the detriment of the world. And so you have the power, right, as an individual, even as a leader of a global, of a country, or just as a citizen in your own country, in your own little town, in your own little high school. You can make a difference, and you can do something to move the needle toward good, or toward the detriment of your society, your community.
Yeah. So, moving on. What made you start summer service?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Well, so yeah, I mean the whole long backstory that I usually tell the shorter version. But when I was in DC, I started looking at things and feeling like we're making a lot of the same mistakes. You know, I was like, we keep going in circles. We're not moving forward as a human race. What can we do as human beings to kind of break this cycle of this, get out of this rut? And I kept coming back to education. I kept coming back to, okay, it's got to be something about how we learn about the world and how we interact with the world. And I had this idea where I would, take young people abroad and learn abroad, because that really changed my life. When I was at St. Mary's, I did a study abroad to London, completely changed the way I saw myself in the world and the way I understood life itself. And I was like, this matters. So can we get more people, particularly people of lower income or backgrounds that don't typically travel abroad, and put them together with everybody, all walks of life of kids, go abroad, learn, come back, make your community better. And it not this mentality of, hey, we're the Americans, we're going to come fix this problem in this developing country and feel good about ourselves and go back to our regular lives. But no, the opposite. Work on your own problems in your own community, and from that go abroad, learn, and continue to come back and make a difference in your own community. Build those bridges internationally, break down barriers within your community, right? Bringing people together. That was kind of the mindset. um, and I left my job at the State Department. A lot of people thought that was crazy, because I wanted to come back to San Antonio and start this nonprofit. I tried to start it. I was working in the military as a contractor. I thought I could do it on the side. It failed miserably, and I just put it on the shelf for almost 10 years. It took about 10 years from the time I had the idea until that fateful day. And in between, I left my career in national security and I came over to become a teacher. I had a friend, Lawrence Scott, Dr. Lawrence Scott. He's a great educator here in San Antonio. In fact, he was my roommate in London, and he said, "Amir, you'd make a great teacher. You just need to jump in and become a teacher." And I listened to his advice. I'm so glad I did. I became a middle school teacher, and like I said, that fateful day was when Julia came up to my desk one day, in the middle of a class, typical class day. It was a portable building with like ceiling tiles that would leak when it rained, and we had no heater in the winter. It was brutal. And one day she walks up to my desk. She said, "Sir, what's that?" And it was a brochure with a picture of the Eiffel Tower. I said, "That's the Eiffel Tower." She goes, "It's beautiful. Can you take us?" And I said, "Yeah, let me show you on a map where that is." And so she sees, Paris, France, and she's like, "Yeah, I'll never go." And I said, "No, no, no. It's not that you can never go, but it's hard. It's going to take money. It's going to take time, and your parents have to be good with you doing that." I said, "I did study abroad in college, so maybe you could do that." I said, "But it is possible for teachers to take students." And the whole class got excited. This is a class of sixth graders, mind you, and they're like, take us," and they want to learn more. Now they're asking me questions about Europe, and they want to learn more about what I'm teaching, which thankfully was geography, so I was on point. And yeah, I told my wife, I came home, I said, "Look, that's what happened at school today." She goes, "Honey, you need to take those kids." And so that's kind of how it started. I had already been running a service club at the school. And I went back to the school and said, "Hey, can I take the kids through the service club?" Which coincidentally was called SOS. Was founded by another teacher called named Mayor Stewart, and hers was called Students Offering Service. Mayor Stewart is a hero of mine. She's a great teacher, and she's in Singapore now. She's teaching abroad, which is great. So Mayor had told me about SOS. My son was in it as a club, and when I became a teacher there, I actually took her position when she left, and so I took over the club. But the school said, "No, you can't travel with the club. Liability issues, and if you want to do something like this, you're gonna have to start your own business or nonprofit." And so that's what I did. I raised $2,000 in a GoFundMe, hired the lawyers and the tax people, and I didn't know the first thing about nonprofits, but I figured needed to be done, and ended up taking a group of 50 travelers to England and France just a few short years later. So we did get to go to the Eiffel Tower. our first trip was Peru. Not long after that, very small group. Then we went to Italy, Greece. I took 50 to Italy, Greece, 50 travelers. That included some chaperones and parents, but mostly students. And then again, the following year, we ended up going to three countries. So it was England and France, China that year, and we had a trip to Costa Rica. So
And it really jumped from uh, 2 students to Peru that very first one to 50.
yeah,
That's that's insane.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
crazy. Um, so starting a nonprofit, from scratch isn't something you see every day because it's a difficult thing. So, what were the main obstacles you faced when trying to start a nonprofit from scratch, and what kept you motivated through it all? What was that light at the end of the tunnel?
Um, yeah, it was hard and it is hard. I mean, nonprofits in general, starting one in and of itself is hard. Most of them fail
Hmm.
after you know a year, and then the majority, even more than that, fail after before they hit 5 years. Thankfully, we're past our 5 year mark, so yay.
Woo!
But what keeps me going is the same thing people always ask me when we go on a trip, and I'll come back and they'll say, "Oh wow, you went to China, you saw the Great Wall, and what else did you see?" And they'll ask me, what was the best thing you saw in China, or in France, or in Costa Rica, or in Australia? And my answer is always the looks on the kids' faces. And I
Wow.
made the point whenever we climbed the Great Wall of China, or we were standing on top, getting to the top of Machu Picchu, I would always make it a point to find a place where I could stand or sit and get a look back at everyone's faces, because that moment was the moment of like awe and inspiration, and that moment where literally sometimes tears were streaming down kids' faces because they had entered this new level of consciousness, like this new reality that they didn't know was possible. And that moment keeps me going. Those moments, or having sitting down and doing a podcast with kids that have been involved with this and have come back and say, "Hey, I want to stay involved," or having an intern who comes to work for me and says, "Hey, I want to work with you. I know I'm in college, but like SOS did so much for me. I want to give back." And my hope is that the students that are involved in it actually take it over and run it. Like, y'all just take it and run with it and become the CEO and become the managers and the people that continue and carry the mission forward. That's what keeps me going.
Yeah, and speaking of like the moment on the kids' faces, I think I definitely had that with SOS in Australia and New Zealand as my first, not only my first trip with SOS, but just generally my first time out of the country, out of the United States. And, I flew all the way across the Pacific Ocean. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, we
But
went
I
to
think,
the country for the first time. That's wild. I mean, I didn't go on any trips with SOS, but for ISA when we went out, it's a very breathtaking experience, honestly.
yeah, because it's crazy because you think, like, oh my gosh, this country, this land is so far away. It's like, 15 hours by plane, but it's like, we're the same people. Like, it's home away from home in a way because you see familiarities in everything, but you also see the differences. And I think that's really what like opened my mind because I realized, these are just, it's just people. It's the same earth.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's cool that everyone has a different first time story, like where their first country they went abroad to was, and I think it impacts how you see things too, and future trips that you take, because you're always comparing to that first experience abroad.
Oh, yeah. Plus, it was just fun.
It's a lot of fun. That's what's made this summer so hard. The summer of COVID, 2020, is that for the last since 2014, I've had the privilege, and it is a privilege, of traveling abroad with students, and been to basically almost every continent except for at this point Africa, which we're scheduled to go to next summer, God willing. But yeah, I mean, to have those experiences and then this summer to just be kind of grounded here at home, and it's important to stop the spread. But don't get me wrong, I'm sad about not getting to travel because it's
Mhm.
yeah.
It's a bummer. Well, speaking of traveling, you've traveled with SOS to so many countries, but you gotta have a favorite. Like I'm pretty sure there's a favorite. Like I have a favorite. So, what trip was your personal favorite?
Ooh, that is a great question. What trip is my personal favorite? They
Like no
all
hard feelings, no hard feelings all around.
And
they
just
all
in
have
general, no specific like your favorite because of the food or anything else. Just
oh
favorite in
oh,
general.
okay, because I was thinking, yeah, for food I definitely know which one I want to say, but okay, favorite in general. Hmm. I think honestly, looking at the way things, you look at all the trips, and there's with travel, there's always uncertainty. There's always things you didn't prepare for because you can't prepare for everything. Um, the countries themselves have their own charm and magic about them, and they all, things that make them special. But as a complete package, it's really between. I'm thinking it's between the Germany and the Japan ambassador trips, and here's why. And they both have they're kind. It's kind of neck and neck, but they were both trips where we went to a sister city. So we went with a purpose of citizen diplomacy. Um, they're both trips to countries that we were at war with 75 years ago, right, in World War II.
Mhm.
So these are countries that were, I mean, literally had the war gone the other direction, we would be in a very, very different world. Um, and to see the allied kind of relationship that we have with these countries and the strong relationships with Japan and Germany, that was really powerful. And going to the Hiroshima bombing site and seeing, just the consequences of mismanaging global relations, or going to Dachau, in concentration camp in Germany, and seeing again the mismanagement of your own government. Like, what happens when citizens can't keep a bad person from getting in office? And what happens when that power starts to sweep across and take away human rights and dehumanize? And to see the transformational journey of students going through that. And we walked through the trail of the Nazis, or we walked through the trail of, the atomic fallout. uh, that made those trips really meaningful, really powerful for me. And so, since Germany was the one that's more recent in my mind, and we added on, kind of, that was the longest trip, I'm gonna go with Germany.
Ooh. Uh, yeah, and I feel that because I went on both of those trips as well.
So, which was your favorite? Because you also went to Australia and New Zealand.
Ooh,
That was a great.
yeah, I'd have to say Japan was my favorite. Um, I think because it was my first sister cities, or like first interaction with our sister city, and so like a first kind of diplomatic trip. And then I'd also like really wanted to go to Japan for like a while, so that would be my favorite. But now I'm curious, which is the one food based?
Yeah, I'm curious too because you mentioned it. Which one is your favorite in
oh,
terms of food?
oh,
Because there's a
I
lot of
still
good
have.
food out there.
Yeah, yeah, Michael. I still have very, very fond and delicious memories of Italy in 2015. When we went to Italy, the food in Italy just blew me away, and it's something that my palate really enjoys. So it was great. Um, I also really like the food in China. I will admit that was also up there with like really great food. So yeah.
So not the raw fish from
Yeah,
Squeaky.
not so much the raw fish guy over here. Yeah.
That was something else.
So, Mr. Samandi, you talked about how like life-changing travel can be and how it just sort of, has such a like a soulful aspect to it. Um, what moment for you has been the most powerful in all of your travels with students? Is there one moment that for you that stands out because of how, just powerful it was?
There's a lot of moments that I can point to and great conversations. That's some of my favorite stuff is just having those pull aside moments where a student pulls you aside and says, hey, this really got to me, and they're in tears, like at Dachau, or they're just blown away by the engineering marvels of Machu Picchu or the Great Wall. Um, but no, the story that really, really still pulls at my heartstrings is the story of Zoe, which you guys may or may not know, but when she was in high school, she struggled with attendance and grades, and kind of had some issues with self harm. And I'm not going to go into all the issues, but let's just say she was very much at risk.
Hmm.
And we talked about it later. She's like, I didn't even know I was at risk. It's like, yeah, you were on pace to be a statistic, Z. And we've talked about that. And so she would come to my class. I was teaching geography in high school. She would come to my class and just kind of tune out, but she always sat in the front, and I thought that was cool. I was like, all right, she's sitting in the front and she's drawing on her arm, but you know what, at least she's in class, like I'm good. And little by little we would talk and built a rapport, and finally she started opening up to me. And one day she's like, hey, you guys are going to London, right, for this England France trip? And I said, yeah. And she's like, it's always been a dream of mine to go to London. Now, you look at the way that she was dressed at that time, and she looked like she was into the punk scene. Like, that's she had the look, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. I said, well, Z, if you can pass, because I know her other math teacher, who's an amazing woman, her math teacher is fantastic. She said, hey, Z's having trouble in my class. I said, let's go talk to the math teacher. I said, Z wants to do this trip. She's like, I said, but I wonder if she can get her grades up. What you think? And she's like, yeah, if she gets her grades up, I'm going to donate $1,000 or whatever it was to help her go.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, Z's face lit up. She's like, oh my gosh. And
Yeah.
so she got on board, man. She would check in with me every day. And, you just build that relationship and show someone you care. And little by little, you'll see the results. And she started passing, which, she was coming to school. She was passing. And pretty soon she starts making A's and B's, right? And we go on this trip to London and we get to Big Ben. I'll never forget the moment. We're standing at the like right on the grass in front of Big Ben, and kids are doing somersaults and just enjoying, taking it in, taking pictures.
Hmm.
Like we're all off kind of in these different directions, close by, but just kids are like sticking their finger, like they're putting their finger on top of Big Ben and taking a photo. And Z's tearing up. Zoe's crying. She goes, Mr. Samandi, I did it. I did it. I'm here. We did it. And I said, you did it. I said, she goes, no, we did it. And I was like, we did it. Here we are. And she says that's the moment her life changed, and she ended up graduating high school and, getting A's and B's, getting into college. And that's the kind of life changing power that our mission has. And those are the stories. That's the fuel that keeps me going.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was just thinking because I know Z from like all the trips that I've been on. I think actually, that's crazy because I never knew that about her,
Yeah, I
and
don't.
like I never would think. That's crazy.
Well, Catherine and Diego both. I mean, y'all have known me for a long time. Michael's just getting to know me, but
Yeah.
and I'm glad to get to know you. But I don't tell a lot of these stories.
Hmm.
I don't necessarily go around telling you all the backstory to everything, but a lot of the things that you saw and witnessed and experienced were like the results of a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and hard work and failures to get to that point where something went right, not just for me, but for other people. And so you just never know when you see something at face value. You're like, you don't know what went into it to get there. Um, but I'm glad to be sharing it today.
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, no use putting up a front on a podcast. It's about sharing, what you feel. And I think you learn, most from a person when they do that. And we're certainly learning a lot about you right now, Mrs. Amandi.
Well, I'm glad you asked.
Oh, oh yeah.
So I have a question, Mr. Samandi. Sort of, this is more of a you question. So you've talked about the challenges that you faced growing up. You've said you had to work twice as hard as others to get a fraction of their success. As someone who has seemingly defied the odds, you went to a premier university, worked for the State Department, and started your own nonprofit. What are some of the harshest realities and biggest obstacles you faced on your journey to success?
Um, yeah, it's always tough when you have to talk about yourself. Um, I felt alienated as a child. You know, I'm mixed. So my dad's from ethnically mixed. My dad's from Iran. My mom's Mexican American, and that right there, you're not Mexican enough. You're not Persian enough. You're certainly not white enough. In the community I grew up in, it was predominantly Anglo, so the racism that was thrown at me was harsh.
Hmm.
When I say harsh, I mean fights. I had rocks thrown at me while they called me racial names. I was spit at. One time, an African American student moved into the neighborhood, and he and I were friends. You know, we became friends, and we had a group of skinheads, like neo-Nazi types, try to run us over in a car, and we were like
Wow.
seventh and eighth grade.
Man,
Yeah. So, I mean, I spent my life, my whole formative years dealing with that kind of racism and having to overcome that and having a lot of trauma from that. Like, it's very traumatic because, when you're a kid, I mean, something like that would just make you feel like you're about to get killed, which, we easily could have. If you look at the news and you see stories like that, that could have been me.
Hmm.
Um, my family didn't always have money, so that was an issue. I remember there was an opportunity in seventh grade to go with a teacher to Fiji or Tahiti. It was one or the other, and I really wanted to go, and my parents were just like, "No way! Like we can't afford this. It costs too much." So you know, I said I made a promise to myself. I was like, "One day I'm going to go. I'm going to go abroad. I'm going to go. I'm going to leave the country someday. And I'm going to go check it out." And that's why it's so important to me that we have scholarships for kids that can't afford to go. So I
Yeah.
think it's poverty. I won't go into the details, but my parents did the best they could. Especially, I know my dad really meant well, but sometimes it's pretty harsh on me, and things got a little unstable at home. So I ended up moving out, and I was living on my own at 16. I say on my own. I lived with my friend and his dad. But I woke up one morning and my mom basically handed me a trash bag and said, you gotta go. So I took everything I had, put it in a trash bag, and left the house. And I never went back, um, like to live with my parents, like since I've been 16. So again, when we do service projects and we give foster kids duffel bags so they don't have to put all their stuff in a trash bag, it means something to me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Wow.
Yeah, I
and
think
then,
it's I think it's great that you, instead of like looking back on your past and thinking, I went through it, so I think other people can. Instead of that, you're actively going out into the community to make sure that kids going through the same thing don't have to be as alone. Like, I think that's really touching.
Yeah. I think that's something that a lot of people don't do nowadays, especially with current politics. They look at a
mhm.
current situation and think, yeah, my family went through that, even though we had everything stacked against us and we did it. So why shouldn't, people who want to do that now, go through the same thing that we did instead of looking to fix the situation and make it, just better overall.
Well, I think um, when you defy the odds and you go, okay, everything said I should be in a jail or dead or in poverty right now. All the statistics, all the indicators. If I can defy that, then it's my responsibility to try to help others navigate through it. It doesn't mean you don't struggle. Everyone needs to go through struggle. Struggle builds you up. If
Yeah.
you don't struggle, you haven't worked for anything. But I'm talking about reducing traumas and educating people to deal with life, right? And everyone
Mhm.
deserves that opportunity. Nobody deserves to have to go through traumas that can be avoided. Like, we shouldn't just let people suffer if we can help them. And that's not to say they don't have to. Everybody has to work hard and do their best and overcome obstacles. But kids don't deserve to be abused, and people don't deserve to starve and be left in the streets. And those are the things that I think those people who do make it and say, well, I made it, everyone else should, you have to acknowledge you're in the minority. You're in a very select group to have made it through those, despite those odds.
Yeah.
Dang, and it's amazing. Like, even though you faced all of this and like you have this on your back, but you're still pushing forward, which is crazy. So, um,
Well, I didn't
kind
even
of
tell
touch.
you about there's a whole other phase of my life from about 20. I had a kid, ended up having a kid when I was 20. Again, beat the odds.
Hmm.
That kid is Gabriel, so Michael knows Gabe. Shout out to
Yeah,
Gabe.
I love Gabe. Gabe, if you're listening to this, you're epic. Oh,
He
great
is
guy.
epic. And
Good
I'm not saying that that wasn't choices that I made. I mean, obviously I made choices and I lived with them, but I'm saying, like, you make those choices, and when you're a kid, yeah, you're gonna make mistakes, and especially with everything that I had kind of to overcome, you just you make those choices, and hopefully you try to make it right. You try to do your best, and I did my best to raise him, as a young adult. So everything with the State Department and grad school, and even part of my St. Mary's undergrad, I was raising a kid. I was a father,
Hmm.
and I'm on the other side of 40 now, not quite 41, and I realized I've been a dad longer than I have not been a dad.
Wow.
That's probably why I'm known as Samandad. But yeah, I mean, those are. I just wanted to kind of throw that in there for you, Catherine, because it's not just the childhood. It's a long road.
Adulthood as well.
Yeah, yeah, it can be a challenge, but you just have to keep doing your best.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about the past. So I want to know, what are the plans for the future? Where do you see SOS in, say, 10 years?
Well, I see in 10 years that students like you who have gone through, the program and the trips and the volunteering, where it's really made that connection for you and it's really opened up, unlocked the world for you, are going to come back and run it and take it even further than I ever could. And I think, you know, we'll be more of a movement than an organization. I see the future of us being this model, take an awesome, like, group of kids, take a dedicated educator, mix them together with like some of our little, templates, and you can build an SOS anywhere. Doesn't
Hmm.
have to be here in San Antonio. So I really want to export, the secret sauce, and show people the way. But really, it's the people that make it go. And the travel really helps because it changes how you see things. And the service is what really, um, teaches you the value of compassion and giving to others. So those three things, the three pillars: learn, serve, explore. If you just keep, wash, rinse, repeat on those cycles, I think you'll have a very meaningful and fulfilling life.
Deep.
Very
Yeah.
good said. Absolutely. So,
Well, I think that's a good note to end on. And
Hmm.
before we end this, though, do you have any last words? I guess. Any last
Yeah,
sudden
I do.
advice?
Actually, I do. I have a few things I want to say. Number one uh, is just the idea of gratitude. I am so thankful. I've talked about a lot of things from overcoming, my childhood and things that I went through in life, and starting SOS, and all of these different experiences, taking kids around the world. It all comes back to others. Others have helped me get here. Others made it possible for me. Others gave me an opportunity when, maybe it seemed like no one else would give me an opportunity. Um, People created things that I could build off of, or taught me things that I could use to help others. And so for me, it was always about how can I just, whatever I've got, leave it all out there so that I can make the world a little better for others. But that's because so many people did that for me, and it meant a lot to me. So, what I want everyone to hear out there is, if you're listening to this and you were one of the people that played a role, you're one of our volunteer staff members, you're a teacher who traveled with us, you're just a donor who gave us a little bit of money here and there, or a lot of money in some cases. The students who just take the time to go out and raise diapers for the diaper bank, or collect books for students who don't have access to books. Thank you all, because honestly, this is I always say SOS is all of us. It's not about me, or it's not about any one person. It's about all of us, and when we work together, look at what we can do. So thank you, um, from the bottom of my heart. That would be my one message. And my other message is, right now we're in a time of uncertainty. There's a pandemic. People are not traveling. People are not going out as much, and obviously for good reason, because we don't want to be vectors of a harmful virus. But you can still make a difference from home. You can still make a difference by just being kind. You can still connect with someone halfway around the world. So don't stop dreaming and thinking and believing in the idea of learn, serve, and explore. Find ways to do it even during a pandemic. You can still be part of the solution. You can still be helping others. And I urge you to have the courage to do that, and take that action. So the day will come again where we will be able to travel, and we will be ready, bags packed and eyes eager, ready to learn, serve, and explore again.
Wow.
That's a
And
great
from
ending.
Beautiful.
yeah, thank
Thanks.
you from all of us
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
believing in us.
Thanks for believing in me.
Yeah, you've given us opportunities that, we would never have had if it wasn't for you and SOS.
I can't wait
Mhm.
to see what y'all are all
Amen
going
to
to
that.
do. You guys,
Yeah.
I'm excited about you. I'm excited about all of you, and to see, like, man, what kind of an awesome world is it going to be as you all take the reins and take control. That day will come, and it's going to be a great day when y'all are ready to take over and run the world.
Yeah, I hope
And you
so.
have well prepared for us for that.
Yeah.
I'm honored. Thank you.
Okay, Michael, would you like
Yeah.
to do the honors and take us
Thank you
out?
so much for your time today, Mr. Samandi. We really appreciate it. And we also appreciate the listeners for tuning in for today's episode. We hope to get episode 3 sometime out in the future. We'll hopefully have even more exciting guests. But with that being said, this is SOS from home signing out. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.